So this morning, I just want to start out when we talk about reclaiming and reconnecting with members. I want to talk to you about God's position and process as we look at this very topic. And I'm going to share with you because God looks the same way as in reclaiming and reconnecting members as he does in just seeking and saving the lost. The process that God uses biblically is no different. There's some differences, but I'm going to break it down into 3 words. I'm going to give you a verse first that we're all familiar with. It's in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 9. It says that God is not willing that what? Any should perish. Okay, so that's in and out. Okay, and that what? All should come to repentance. Okay, so just as much as God desires to seek the lost, his desire is just as great for the lost or disconnected church member. His desire comes through in that God is consistently desiring to start a conversation with those. And a very interesting thing is 3 words I want you to remember, and it kind of missed it on the slide. Conversation, conviction, conversion. This is God's process, okay? And he's the greatest communicator the world has ever known. In the Garden of Eden, God was the first one to what? After the fall, take initiative to what? Communicate. He communicated by saying what? Where are you? Okay? Now I'm sure that Jesus in some way, shape, or form in our lives has asked us the same question. Right? Where are you? It's no different then as it is today. God is seeking and he's asking many people the same question. Where are you? Many times, though, we don't recognize God's work in the process. And this is important to understand. God is not silent when it comes to the life of the saved or the lost. He's the greatest communicator, and the Bible describes how he begins many times the conversation that he is initiating with everybody. While we sit here, God is still communicating with your community. While we function here, God is still communicating with your church, even though you're not there. God is active, and he's very much involved. You're all familiar with the term general revelation, right? God uses nature, personal experience, and human reason to get our attention to begin a conversation with us. One example is the prodigal son. We're all familiar with the story in Luke. This young man decides to leave the house of his father in stating to his father that he was dead to him. He leaves the house, but God has not left him. God begins a conversation with this young man through what we describe and what the Bible describes as general revelation. It's interesting in Luke chapter 15, the first thing that gets this young man's attention is what? It's a famine. A severe famine comes to the land, and this young man's attention is gained through this natural disaster. A natural event that God is going to use to begin a conversation with this young man, generally speaking. God often does this in our lives, but he does this in the lives of those that are disconnected from our churches. It doesn't always have to be, though, something tragic. God used a dream to communicate with whom? Nebuchadnezzar. God used a burning bush to get the attention of Moses, who, by the way, was wandering in the wilderness. Many members that have left our churches are wandering in the wilderness, and God is seeking to get their attention so that he can begin a conversation with them. And this conversation is essential to conviction and ultimately conversion. God is at work. I want to give you a story and a quick example. Yesterday, right here in town, we went to Goodfellows Pizza. And while we were in Goodfellows Pizza, there was this gentleman that was standing in the midst of about 10 of us. And he was looking around, and he was kind of nervous. and he was kind of drawn inward. And he looks at my wife and I and he says, "You are all Adventist, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, we are. We're having a conference right over here." And the next thing he said is, "I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist, but I own a local brewery." And I thought, here God is using an opportunity, generally speaking, to start a conversation. That's where God begins. He starts with a conversation. But at some point in this process, God will move from general revelation, which he uses to get their attention, to specific revelation, which is what? A spoken word, a word of instruction. Okay? Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, but the dream wasn't enough. Eventually, God brought what? Daniel. That was the spoken word. In other words, there had to be a transition in the conversation process to move from, "I got your attention," to now, "I want to instruct." Okay? I want to be able to encourage, and I want to be able to answer some of the questions you may have. So this conversation deepens because it moves from the general to the specific. And God does this with everybody. He starts a conversation and he wants to deepen the conversation. And so through some events, he gets us to transition from the general to the what? To the specific. Sometimes, often, we make the mistake of transitioning too quickly. Because we think we're God. And we step into a place that we do not belong in because that's God's position. That's not our position. I'll give you an example in just a little bit about this. Okay? Moses, when it comes to the tree, right? The tree gets his attention, general revelation. What happens next? God speaks. And now you move from the general to the specific. And now he has some instruction to give to Moses. And it's no different when it comes to this man, this prodigal son. Because after all of these things happen, God has his what? Attention. And as God is conversing and getting his attention, he says, but when he came to what? He came to himself. Okay? This is where conviction starts to enter into the conversation. Right? Conviction, in other words, is the process where we begin thinking about how we think. Okay? We often don't do that. Right? Often we what? We speak first and think later. Okay? And many times we find ourselves in trouble when working with people because oftentimes we speak too quickly rather than listen to see where God is actually at work in his conversation process. And then he wants to use us to deepen the conviction that he's bringing through the process of conversation. Okay? Now, in closing, and I got just 6 minutes, I want to give you an example. I asked Joanne, I hope you don't mind if I use you and Hector.
That's fine.
Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay, I want to give you an example. I'm going to actually go back. If you have an opportunity, go back to Daniel. Go back to Daniel chapter 2. I know we study this and we think about the prophecy, right? But there is so much that happens other than the prophecy that actually prepares Nebuchadnezzar for the prophecy. God's actually preparing a pagan king through this process. Daniel chapter 2 is the conversation God has with the king. Daniel chapter 3 is God's conviction in the king's life as he uses Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. And then Daniel chapter 4 is the king's conversion. And so God takes everybody through this same process. Conversation, conviction, conversion. So now I want to give you one example in Daniel. And I want to show you these verses and how it relates to this process. I'm standing away from the mic. Joanne wanted to be God, so here you go. You can stand right here. And if you can, Hector, stand right here. We often, you're going to face Joanne. Okay? I'm doing this really quickly. There's much more. But here, I want you to grab this, and I want you to hold on to it, and then I'm going to end with a story really quick.
He's going to tell you to trust.
Okay? God gives Nebuchadnezzar a dream. Okay? God works through general revelation to get the king's attention. He does that with members. He does that with people that have left the church. He uses the same process. Okay? Oh, sorry about that. So what happens is, he gives Nebuchadnezzar a dream. He's got his attention. God is communicating with Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? But at some time there has to be a transition from the general to the specific in our conversation, in our work, in God's work. So God now brings Daniel into the story. I'm doing this really quickly. But it's interesting in the Bible, when you read how Daniel approaches the king, he makes 3 comments to understand positioning. The first comment, he says, but there's a what? So he starts with God. Now, oftentimes when we talk about Daniel, we talk about the story as if I'm Daniel, and Daniel's explaining to the king what God wants the king to understand. That's not what Daniel's saying. This is not what Daniel's saying. Daniel's saying there's a God in heaven, right? And that God is at work. And that God is wanting to converse with you. Because he's going to bring you to the point of conviction and then thus conversion. So then God is speaking. The next thing he says is, as for what? You. So you have God, you have you. And then how does he end? He says, but as for, okay? So Daniel is standing here. He's not standing here. This is why the prophecy has such force, because the king knows who's speaking. God is speaking. Therefore, you're not going to look at me. You're not going to focus on me. I am not the center of your story. I'm standing on the outside of your story. But often what we do is we see God work in people's lives and we inject ourselves into the process. And we take a position that doesn't belong to us. It's no different for the lost as it is for reclaiming missing members. If we could understand where God is working and understand what God is in the process of doing, we can cooperate. Thank you. We can cooperate with God in the process. And as we cooperate with God in his process, we will see more success in bringing people back to the church and even bringing new people into the church. I'm going to end with this. He cooperates with those who what? Cooperate with him. If you understand his process and you understand where he's working and cooperate with him from the outside, God will do things that will blow your mind. I want to finish with one quick story. I have 1 minute and 50 seconds. Yeah, that's right. Really quick. Okay. I want to share with you one quick story. We have several actually returning members that are coming to the church. Even though I'm the church growth director, I pastor a church. And we have several returning members that are coming back to the church because I'm watching God work in their lives and I'm tuning my ears to where God is working. And I'm learning to listen to what God is doing. And I want to share one story with you. We have, and this is a pretty interesting story, we have a returning member that is coming back to the church who is a registered sex offender. Now we would look at that situation right here and we would say, there was one church that said, listen, if he comes back to our church, we want nothing to do with him. Okay? But I sat down and I listened to his story. And I started understanding where God was what? Working in his life. He spent 3 years in prison. He paid the time and now he has a parole officer and he only comes to our worship service. He can't come to everything else. And we have an elder that stays with him at all times, every time he comes in. So just to let you know, it's safe. But nonetheless, we can't deny what God is still doing in his life. And we see God working in his life. And what's exciting to me is how the church is learning how to cooperate with God in his process of saving souls. And so even when we have fellowship dinner, when he comes to church, he doesn't come to anything else but just church service for 40 minutes. But the church makes him a plate of food. And they say, we know you can't stay with us, but here's food. You can take this home. And they keep conversing with him. And they keep talking to him during the week. And they keep ministering to him because they see what God is doing in his life. God's position and God's work makes all the difference in the process of reclaiming and bringing people back to the church. And if we can understand where God is at work, God will help us do a work that we can't do by ourselves. And it's exciting to see how the Lord is leading. My time's up.
You started the timer and I'm not ready yet?
Oh.
Just kidding.
We'll give you an extra half an hour.
Half an hour. That's good. Are you guys ready for another half hour? All right. Hey, everyone. All right. I am Joanne. I am in the Potomac Conference, and I am planting a church in Washington, D.C. 80% of our attendance, members, part of the launch team, all of that is unchurched. People who have left the church. For whatever reason. So our target is to reach the unchurched. And we have a regular attendance of about 70. We haven't launched just yet. Our grand opening is in September. But we see God moving and working in this church plant. So first off, I want to ask you, is your church ready to receive former members? That is the question. There was a young lady I noticed was not going to church. I hadn't seen her in a long time. So I reached out to her and I said, hey, I would love for you to come and join us, sing with our praise team. And her response was like, are you sure? Are you sure you're not going to get in trouble? And I said, what do you mean? I'm like, you are gifted. You have a beautiful voice. We want you to sing with the praise team. She's like, last time I went to church, they got me down from the pulpit. They said I couldn't sing. And they told everyone I was a bad example. She told me, I don't trust pastors. I don't trust leaders. I have religious PTSD. I don't want to go back to church. I don't think I want to put myself in that situation. So I had to keep telling her, I got your back. I'm asking you to come. It's going to be okay. I got you. Slowly, she started coming back. She started noticing things were not the same, that there were people she could trust in the church, and that healing process started. And she started to see God differently and church differently. And now she's one of the elders of our church. So don't give up on people, okay? So today I want to talk to you about, is your church ready to receive former members? Because if the church is not healthy, it's not ready. And it defeats the whole purpose of trying to reclaim former members. Because honestly, they're not going to come back if the church is the same as it was when they left. So if you want them to come back, you got to figure out why did they leave and what you need to do to help change things for them to come back. Because if not, they won't. And if the church does not appear loving or welcoming, they're not coming back, including on social media. They are watching what you post, what you share. And if they don't see a church that is welcoming and loving, they're not stepping a foot in your church. So how can we create a healthy culture? You know, that DNA, that church that is alive and vibrant, people want to be a part of it. You know, so former members can come back to church. As a pastor, it's great if you can get together with your leadership team and ask yourself, why do we do what we do? Get back to the basics, right? Ask yourself, why do we do what we do? Why does your church exist? What is your mission? What is your purpose? Why are there ministries in place? What is their purpose? Who do they serve? Does it draw people to Jesus? Does it make people feel loved and welcomed? Or is it done because this is how it's always been done? Are you reaching out to your community? Are you making a difference? You got to continually ask yourself as a church, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Evaluate constantly. And don't get too comfortable, because you lose focus and purpose when you get too comfortable. Because what you do creates the culture for your church. Every church has a culture, whether you like it or not. Yours does, mine does. If the culture is healthy, amazing things happen. People love being there. People want to serve. There is joy. If the culture is not healthy, things don't happen. People don't want to show up. People don't want to serve. People leave, and it becomes a declining church. So what does a healthy church look like? Get together with your leadership team. Start writing it down. What does a healthy church look like? What are the qualities of a healthy church? It's inviting, right? It's welcoming, it's loving, it's accepting, it's filled with grace, with joy. Is it safe for everyone, including LGBTQ? Is it authentic? Are people experiencing Jesus when they come to church? Or is it just a place they go to once a week and go home? Then get together with your church, your leadership team, and begin to identify what is healthy in your church right now. Get together. What are we doing right now that is healthy? Are our people passionate about people? Really passionate about people? Are they ready to serve? Are they willing to do whatever it takes to reach people? Is the space clean? That's also part of being a healthy, inviting church. Are the greeters welcoming? Are members inviting and accepting? Kids ministries is flourishing. Youth are involved. There is diversity in age and culture. Everyone is participating. People are smiling. The community is being reached. Whatever you are doing right now that is healthy, celebrate it. Let your church know the healthy things you are doing. But also take time to look at the negative things that are happening in the church. What is toxic? And you need to remove those. Are church members quick to judge and be critical? Are they always trying to correct people? Or do they always want to state what is acceptable and not acceptable in this church? Do they put traditions above people? Are they more concerned about self and in-reach than outreach? These are toxic behaviors. So what needs to be eliminated and removed to become a healthy church? Because remember, you can't eliminate what you don't identify. So identify the things you want gone from your current culture in order to make room for things that will lead to a healthy culture. A culture ready to receive those you are trying to reach. And then once you've figured out what a healthy culture looks like, be the change you want to see. It starts with you. It starts with your leadership team. In your messages, in your social media posts, the way you interact with people, continually show your church what it looks like to be a healthy church. People need to be reminded. We forget, we're human. Use phrases that people can remember, that are simple. Every Saturday, tell them we are the most loving church, the most welcoming church. Everyone is welcome here. This is a safe space for everyone. Have people up front, different ages, different cultures, diversity. Get everyone involved. When people are engaged, when people are serving, they take ownership of the church and they feel like this is their church. But when you have one or two trying to take charge and trying to tell everyone what to do, that is not healthy. Okay? So remind people, what are your values? What is the mission of the church? It's to be like Jesus, right? To connect people with Jesus. You want, anytime anyone enters your church, to encounter Jesus in everything you do. Because any chance there's a moment of criticism, judgment, you got to deal with it quickly. Stop it from the get-go. Because if you let it continue, people will then feel the freedom to continually act in that manner. Okay? And remember, you are not only a loving church within the four walls of the church. If you are a loving church, you're a loving church outside of the church. Because the church is you. The church is not a building. So you want people, members, former members to come back. You need to go find them. Look for them. Love them where they're at in their journey. Don't just go reach out to them to tell them we want you back at church. Get to know them. Build a relationship. Journey with them. Let them know that you are interested in them as a person, not as a number for a church attendance. They want to know they can trust you. They want to know they can, that you're going to be there for them, that you got their back. They want to know that you are safe, that they can ask any questions and it's okay, and you don't have to have all the answers. They just want to be able to share with you what they're going through, and you help them in that process. You cannot be loving only on the inside of the church building. You're the church, and wherever you are, you should be loving. We have a young lady didn't want to go to church. And I didn't know who she was. Her aunt was actually following us on social media. And her aunt sent me a message through Instagram. And she said, I'm reaching out to you because I see that you are a loving church. And my niece has not wanted to go back to church because she's afraid of going back to church. She feels like she's going to be judged and criticized because, you see, she is pregnant and she's not married. So I was like, yes, connect me with her. I want to get to know her, right? And she connected me with her niece. We met. This was during the pandemic. She's got her baby. She connected with our launch team on Zoom. The moment she got onto that Zoom meeting, everyone loved on her like she was already part of the family. She introduced us to her son. Pandemic now has kind of eased off a little bit. We're meeting in person. She has come to church. She has brought her father, who hasn't been to church since she was 7 years old. She has brought friends, non-Adventists, to church because now she knows this church is different. It loves me for me. It accepts me as a single mom. I don't have to pretend. I can be who I am, and I find Jesus here. So what we do in our church, we love people. We tell our church members, you got to love them first. They need to know you love them before they're going to come back to church. They need to see it in your messages, in your posts, in the way you interact with people. They may not approach you, but someone's watching you, how you interact with others. It could be an aunt, it could be a family member, or they could just be watching you as you interact here, and they could see if you're a loving person, how you are, how you relate to people. Then you got to identify them. Where are they? Where are these former members? Ask the parents of the church, where are your kids? We haven't seen them in a while. Ask, friends, family, other, wherever you go, where are your kids? Because mainly it's the young adults, right, that are gone, kids that have left the church. Look for them. Once you find them, connect with them, follow up with them. Don't just send them one message, we miss you at church, we haven't seen you at church, but actually ask them, how are you doing? How was your week? I'm praying for you. I'm here for you. Don't just reach out to tell them to come to church. It goes beyond that. You got to build a relationship. You got to engage them when they come to church. They have many gifts and talents they want to share as well. Use those gifts. Let them be creative. Let them use the gifts God has given them. Get them involved, because once they're involved and serving, it is more likely they will stay. And you have to create a safe space for them. It has to be healthy and safe. If not, they're going to leave like they did before. Having a healthy church, a safe church, creates an environment for those whom you have reconnected with and reclaimed to remain, be engaged, and invite others to join as well. Okay, that's my time.
All right, good afternoon. Are you guys still awake?
Yes, yes.
That's good. That's good. My name is Pastor Hector Caban. I'm the senior pastor in Tampa, Spanish. It's a privilege for me to be here today. We start basically, no, come on. Yes. All right, we start basically we divide the seminary in three parts. We start with the God vision, what is the most important thing, how God's want to connect with former members, then how to create that environment, that healthy environment in our church, in our leadership. And now I want to talk to you guys about how we can put this on practice in the church, basically. All right? Probably you're going to relate with these questions, and I want you to answer me. I like, when I ask, like, we can have a conversation. Thinking one person, and I think everybody has one person that you want to bring them to church. Just thinking one name, all right? Just give me one name, whoever. Laura. Okay, who else? Bill. Anybody else? Another name? Karen. All right? One more name. Who? Kathy. All right. Probably everybody thinks in one name. How do you want your church to look if that person comes to church? And you have one shot. Get rid of the deacons. How do you want? No. What do you want to remove? How do you want your church to look? If you have one shot for Laura, for Karen, for Hector, for Luis, whoever you have in your mind right now, how do you want your church to look like? And you have one shot. A hug when they come. What else? Loving. Extremely accepting. Interested. Then my question is why? Yes, sir. Yes. The question is why we don't put that on action. Why we, as a leader, we don't put that on action. Why? Because part of our DNA is we do church for ourselves. We don't do church for ourselves. We have to do church for others. Because when we do church for others, we do church for ourselves. But we think, no, Pastor, we have to talk about Revelations. We have to talk about the end of coming. We have to talk about those stuff. Things that we learn how to be doing church of the way that we thought that is the correct way, but it's not a friendly environment for others to come and sit. Do you ever think how other person that never came to your church or has been out for a long time will feel right now if they come to your church? And then start thinking a lot of things that they have to adapt, instead of our church adapting to them, to make sure that they feel at home, to make sure that they feel that they part of a family. Sometimes we don't think of that they sit at church and they feel like they are, in my country they call it, una cucaracha en baile de gallina. That's what they're saying, a cockroach in a dance of chickens. No, but they don't feel that they part of it, because our DNA sometimes globally is that they have to adapt to us instead of us to them, because we think that we're going to let the world get in if we do that. I have this gentleman came to our church. It was the first time for him for a long time. He came with his family. And then he was going to get baptized. And he asked me, Pastor, I don't want to get baptized because what I learned is just I have to do a lot of stuff. I have to remove a lot of stuff, what I'm doing right now, to be baptized. And I said, why? No, because that's what I learned. I learned that I have to change days. I have to remove the way that I'm talking, the way that I'm dressing, the way that I'm not there yet. And we have a healthy conversation, and then he got baptized. A month later, he called me. Well, his wife called me. He said, Pastor, we are in the middle of an argument here. I said, what's going on? I thought she was talking to me by herself. I said, no, my husband is here. And then he just told me that if I don't believe in LNGY, I cannot be called Seventh-day Adventist. I couldn't believe that the same gentleman that was telling me that he was not going to get baptized because of a lot of things. Now his wife is coming to church and he said, if you don't believe in LNGY, you cannot be called Seventh-day Adventist. The point here is not about believing in LNGY or not. The main point is that sometimes we don't do church for others. We do church for ourselves. How we can put that on practice? It takes a person 30 seconds in your parking lot to decide if they're going to stay at your church or leave your church. My question is, how friendly is your parking lot? How friendly is your parking lot for others? Then what you can do? I can give you an idea of something that we are doing. We are not perfect in our church in Tampa, but I can give you an idea of things that we are doing that it helps you to be more intentional over the things that you do, to make your church more friendly, to be practical on the things that you have to do to make a church for others. And we create what we call it a VIP ministry. VIP ministry is basically the greeters, but we change the name, focusing on other people. And we create 4 stations. The 4 stations are starting in your parking lot, then in the lobby, then inside the church, and then the last station is a VIP lounge. Everything is focusing on others, making sure that they feel at home. Because evangelism is a lifestyle. Make sure that every sermon in a Saturday focuses on Jesus. What we do, they come from the gate in our church. We have 3 or 4 greeters in the parking lot with signs, making sure that if this is your first time, you can hug your car horn. And then, if it's the first time for them, they already know that there is a special parking lot for them. That person goes directly to the person over there and then asks them the name. Hey, what's your name? My name is Luis. Luis, this is a pleasure to have you here. Welcome. This is your first time? Yes, it's your first time. That person, the VIP person in the parking lot, is telling the other in the radio, hey, Luis has a red shirt and he's coming to the lobby. As soon as that person comes in the lobby and the greeter in the lobby says, hey, Luis, welcome, you want to see the face on those people. Amazed. What, these people are psychic or something like that? Of course, we don't do it with everyone because sometimes we have a lot of people coming in at the same time. It's difficult. But at least they know if we do it at least from 10:05 we're in the right track. That person receives a special gift, a special box, and the person, the greeter, inside the church, they have a special place for them, and they sit them. After they're done, we have the VIP lounge. VIP lounge is for the first guests or people that they stand up in the final calling, and we have a group of people that they're going to only spend time with them. Spend time. We have a lot of tourist people because we're in Tampa. They just want to go to the beach. And they come to our church. But at least it doesn't matter what is the reason you come in, if you're a tourist or you just come to the first time to church. We're gonna serve you. And this is really important. This is really important. We need to serve others without a hidden agenda. If you don't learn something else, learn this. You have to serve others without a hidden agenda. A lot of people doesn't want to come to our churches because they think that the only reason they want to come, that you want them to come to church, is because you want them to be baptized. And of course, I hope that's the final goal. But when the only reason you have is that, or just to give them Bible studies, and you don't serve them transparently, they will know that. They will know that. And they sometimes they just want a friendship, a family environment. They just want them to be loved. But what we do, we have a list of things that they have to do to change, and we forget that we are created to love them, to serve them, and the only one that is created to change them is the Holy Spirit, not us. One person asked me this question: what we do, Pastor, if two women comes from the same sex, married, come and sit in our church? What you will do? I said, what do you mean? What you will do? Well, preach them, love them. Oh, but you're not going to tell them to change their lifestyle? That's not my job. My job is to love them. Oh, if they stay there for 30 years like that, you will leave. My job is not to change people. My job is to love people. The person to change people is God. You understand what I'm trying to say? And when we serve others without hidden agendas, they will understand that we are loving them transparently, like they're our family, and that change people. Because God manifests in a powerful way through us in that sense. What we have to do then? We need to learn, in part of these ideas that we are bringing you, we need to learn how to be intentional. You need a purpose of what you're doing, why we're doing it. You need to be relevant of the things that you're doing. You have to make sure that things that you're doing are making sense in the community that you're living, with the former members that you're trying to reach. You need to make sure that you have to be accessible for others. And at the end, we need to be creative and with things that we do. Not because we learn to do church in a way, this is the final word. Things can be changed. Time passes and things can be changed. And there's a lot of things that we did in the past that didn't work. And that's okay. And there is a lot of things that we're going to do in the present that is not going to work. And that's okay. We learn from our failures. You know, before any heroes in the Bible, they were at the top of the game Before that, they always were where? At the floor. They're learning from failures. We can learn from our failures and make sure that we are a church that is relevant. Evangelism is a lifestyle, and it's done when you see Jesus face to face. God bless you.